Hello, welcome to another episode of Landlord TV. This is your host, Rob Wells from the law office of Robert Wells. We help landlords get out of their sticky landlord-tenant situations. In this episode, we're going to talk about landlords. Are you applying your rental payments according to the Tenant Protection Act? And landlords, can you apply a security deposit to satisfy COVID-19 rental debt? Before we get started, landlords and property managers, if you're going through a tough landlord-tenant scenario by yourself, don't do that. Give us a call. Schedule a free case review today, and we can help you get through that sticky landlord situation so you're not doing this alone. There are many nuances within the Tenant Relief Act, and the process for landlord-tenant evictions has changed quite significantly within the last couple of years, so we just want to be here to help you guys out. So, going back to the topic, landlords, are you applying your rental payments according to the Tenant Relief Act? Well, and this situation's come up quite a lot, actually, since October 1st, where we're getting new landlords coming in. They're telling us, hey, they're coming in for non-payment of rent. We come to find out that they are not applying their tenants' rental payments according to the Tenant Relief Act. And typically what happens is, let's say your tenant is several months behind and you get a payment from your tenant. What's the natural thing to do? Well, you're going to apply that payment towards the latest amount of rent due, which, let's say, your tenant was 3 months behind. I'm going to put it on the very furthest month. No, you can't do that. Under the Tenant Relief Act, it basically states that if you have any COVID-19 rental debt, which is debt that's accrued between March 1st of 2020 and September 30th, 2021, any monthly rental payment to any COVID-19 rental debt has to first be applied to the prospective month's rent, meaning the current month's rent. So, for example, it's October, right? And let's say your tenant makes a payment October 1st, or they just make it in any point in period in October. Well, according to the Tenant Relief Act, you have to apply that rent to October 2021's rent. You can't apply that balance towards September 2021's rent, for example, unless the tenant has agreed in writing to allow the payment to be applied to previous months. The statute is silent on whether or not if a tenant makes an overage payment, let's say, your rent's $1,000, but your tenant makes a payment for $2,000, they're trying to catch up. The statute's kind of silent on that. Our recommendation is you probably should just get into a written agreement with your tenant, because the law does allow you to apply payments towards any COVID-19 rental debt if you have a written agreement. But the situation then becomes sticky, and it becomes a gray area if your tenant's making overage payments. But if your tenant just made a one-time payment for 1 month's worth of rent, the statute's very clear. It basically says you have to apply that payment towards that particular month's rent unless otherwise agreed in writing. Brings up another question we always get, or a situation we're getting to, is landlords that have security deposits. Can you apply a security deposit to satisfy COVID-19 rental debt? And the answer is no, unless you have a written agreement from your tenant. Statute basically says that, hey, unless the tenant agrees in writing, you cannot apply a security deposit during the tenancy to satisfy COVID-19 rental debt. Obviously, if your tenancy has been terminated, for example, let's say you gave a 60-day notice, for example, and your tenant vacates, nothing changes the law with regards to security deposits and applying a security deposit to debt. But if your tenant is still in possession and still renting the property out from you, you can't use that security deposit to pay COVID-19 rental debt and then demand your tenant replenish the security deposit. You can't do that unless you both agree in writing to do so, or the tenant agrees to do so. So again, landlords, if you're going through a non-payment of rent scenario, the law, the Tenants Relief Act, has a lot of nuances in it. And if you're going through this, please, we're offering you, just come on by our office, schedule a free case review. This stuff is quite tricky nowadays. I think a lot of landlords don't even realize that this statute is here, and the consequences of violating this statute could mean the difference between your non-payment of rent case being thrown out of court because you applied your rental payments the incorrect way, even though traditionally rental payments traditionally are governed by common practice or by your lease agreement, and the standard practice of applying rent towards the oldest months of rent due. You kind of can't do that right now, at least with regards to COVID-19 rental debt. So until next time, we'll be in touch. Take care.